And we're live. Hello, everybody. It is not Friday, but Saturday. That's going to throw me off. But fortunately, it's not like we have anything else to do because we finished this, and this was the big thing to do. Seriously. Okay, so here is the fancy book. This is the not for resale galley that is ours, which I think we have enough of them. They'll probably make their way up into the collectibles on the site. This one does not contain the final chapter that I added. This is like the editing copy before that. But it's got all the fancy stuff and the layout and all of the pages of the original and all cleaned up, and starts with, oh, I don't know, really handy things like we love our patrons page.
Yay!
You all made this possible. I can't say enough, like, just the relief of being able to buy books back and get the rights back from a publisher who stopped really doing anything useful for the book, because they really had just relegated them to print on demand themselves, which technically a publisher is not supposed to do, but my contracts back then happened before print on demand and digital and a whole bunch of things happened, and Wiser never changed them, and it's a whole thing, but it motivated us to get the books back. So yay. Book back. This is the third of that trio for the re-release of everything that I've done through Wiser, and now they are all ours. And seriously, like, I love this art that Kat did. And I kinda did you see the proposal that I made where I kinda wanted to do like a postcard of it and make it into like a little meditation card?
I did. I wasn't expecting for you to talk to me, but hello. Yes. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Because the cover is beautiful.
Yeah, no,
it does
I want to do
more
something
justice
extra,
to
you know. Well,
the whole theme.
like, it's a really good image of like the Gates of Dream, and it sort of like draws your eye in and like takes you into a pretty nifty place. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch of people on here just all saying hi.
Hello.
Tell them more about what, like, we got the rights back, but what is this book? Why re-release it?
Okay, so this is Psychic Dreamwalking. Why re-release it? So while it was not the most heinously edited of my books in all of my work with publishers, it was one where Wiser, the editor, had a different idea of how some of the chapters needed to go than I did. And since I was a fairly new quantity, I lost that fight. And I think the thing that galled me the most was the most consistent and honestly well-earned criticism the book received was it felt like it was a little out of sequence in the first couple of chapters. And there were a couple of chapters that Wiser was like, maybe not stuff on vampires and psychic like attack. Let's just, kick that to the curb. So what we got to do was to find my original manuscript that was like my finished manuscript that I sent to them, and go back over that and find, one, the lost chapters, and two, like the original order that the chapters were supposed to go in, and take like a look at, was the editor actually like right? Did these need to move? Like how does this go? And we sort of agreed, all three of us, that the flow was better to go back to the way it had it originally. So the current chapter order with this new release reflects more of my intentions for how the book progresses and how you are introduced to this concept of dreams and dreaming and where lucid dreaming and out of body intersect. We get to see a couple of more like personally revelatory experiences and how those reveal some of the the tools that you have for this. And then the part that was the hardest was writing. I wanted to do a retrospective. Like, I knew I wanted an extra chapter at the end, and I struggled. Like, this was supposed to be out in 2023. I'm not gonna lie. Like, this was, but
that one was supposed to be out in 2021.
Okay, well, shush. I mean, many things like it was just it was a comedy of errors for like all the things that kept it going. But like I was supposed to get that done by December at the latest, and it would not come together. And I circled back around to it. I wrote it, I rewrote it, I scrapped it. I can't even tell you like how many different versions of this exist, none of which quite gelled until I finally. There were a couple of things that I guess I was glossing over. One, which is the story where somebody who read the book picked up on one of my guardians, like one of my spirit guardians, when they were trying to dream walk to me. Um, and that's a whole thing, but it was, simultaneously validating to me that they had picked up on this spirit that was kicking around in my room, and also validating to them when I was like, oh no, that guy, I know that guy, and also, maybe don't try to dream walk to me without giving me a warning ahead of time. Maybe, uh, I mean, their their reasoning made sense in the sense that like they didn't have anybody else to dream walk to, they didn't have anybody to partner with, and their thought was like, well, you wrote the book, so you'd be okay with this. No. Suffice to say, like I didn't even notice. Like my Kimrick, the Guardian, was just like basically doing his job and keeping them out. And they, what was the coolest part of that was honestly them having like the courage and the wherewithal to reach out in an email and talk about like, hey, I think I messed up, and here is what was happening, and maybe I'm gonna sound crazy, but here's what happened. Which that exchange was really cool.
So there's some questions in the chat
Yeah,
about
I would love questions.
What is the book about? Like people have maybe never heard
Oh.
of this particular of your books.
Okay.
Yeah.
So its original title was The Art of Dreamwalking, but I could not escape wiser without putting psychic in front of everything. I just decided to roll with it. At this point, everybody knows it as Psychic Dreamwalking who's read it before. This is a manual on how to harness the dream state in order to travel and communicate with other people or other beings at a distance. The main focus is other living people, but it is not limited to that. And it is not strictly limited to lucid dreaming, like full on sleep states. We explore the altered states of consciousness that our minds go through, from waking consciousness to dreaming consciousness to the in between state, which is broadly called hypnagogia. So the hypnagogic state, which is like that hazy space between sleeping and waking, where you start to kind of have like maybe auditory hallucinations, maybe like little like chevrons and things floating before your eyes. It's sort of not fully dreaming, it's like a pre-dreaming state, but it is a richly powerful state that if you can harness it, you can do a whole lot of stuff, because a lot of the ordinary barriers to your consciousness have started to melt away. And this book is about those curious spaces in our minds that allow us to connect, uh, both with spirit communication, but particularly, again, with other people. Now, dream walking events happen for people frequently spontaneously. They are some of the more frequently reported paranormal or psychic dreaming experiences, where crisis dreams or death announcing dreams happen, where someone goes through a very intensely traumatic or crisis driven event. They are not intentionally or even consciously trying to reach out to someone psychically, but the crisis of the event necessitates, it drives this reaching out. And so the person who is the receiver of this experience, it stands out to them because it's not their normal interior landscape. Suddenly something has inserted itself into their dreaming mind or their semi-awake consciousness, and they have this experience of a communication. It's frequently in these spontaneous events, especially the death announcing dreams, it's frequently someone saying goodbye. Now, there are tons and tons and tons of these experiences reported before the era of the internet and cell phones, like where we were so vastly and rapidly connected, where someone would, you know, they're asleep, they feel like they wake up, or something catches their attention. A person who they know, who they expect to be very far from them, shows up in their space. They have a conversation. The person notes the time. Sometimes they realize that they have woken up from this experience. Sometimes it's seamless and it's almost as if the person was in the room with them. But because it stands out, it's so extraordinary, they make a note, and then they try to figure out, like, well, maybe I should go talk to that person. Like, I haven't heard from them for a while. And as things will unfold, it will become apparent that that person either passed in that moment or was in enough of a crisis state that they might have been afraid that they were going to pass, that they really needed someone to connect with in that moment, and they were thinking about their friend, their lover, their family member at a distance. Those pathways of connection are fascinating to me. Now, there's sort of a backstory with this. Is I The term dream walking is not one that I came up with myself. It was one that was taught to me by another 9 and 10-year old when I was in 4th grade. We did dream walking stuff. Me and this fairly peculiar young person who I have not been able to ever track down afterwards. They were in high school with me and then had to move away. It's a whole thing, but I make a point of acknowledging Pearl, that person, and our escapades in elementary school, partly because it's where a name comes from, where a term comes from is important to me. Like, it's important to acknowledge that this was something given to me rather and shared with me, rather than something that I just sort of made up off the top of my head.
Yeah, there's a whole other conversation going
Oh,
on.
cool. Conversations are
chat.
great.
Just like questions about where to find your workshops and where to get books. I've been dropping links in. Actually, I could.
Well, yeah, because I've done a number of classes and stuff. I mean, I feel like I talk about dreams and dreaming all the time. Like almost everything, dreaming and those altered states will come up because they are so potent. There's so much. Like, if there is an undiscovered country, like the real final frontier is right here. It is between our ears. It is within the dome of our skulls. There's so much that goes on there, and dream walking is going in order to get out. One of the other reasons that I wrote the Psychic Dream Walking book and like really felt the need to define this as its own technique was, I came of age as a practitioner from like the 70s and the 80s, and astral projection was a big deal. And that's what everybody freaking talked about. And astral projection is pretty clearly defined, especially in a lot of books from that time period and in the books that came before. So, like Dion Fortune, Robert Monroe, where it is this, you are projecting a thing. So you're going out of your body. It is generally assumed that you are projecting an etheric self, a subtle self, and it looks a lot like you. Although, depending on who you're studying, you have some control over that. There's this sense of a silver cord, this sort of better not break it weird tether of like psychic vital force between your physical body and this subtle body that you're projecting for astral projection. And the thing of it is I never did any of those things when I did out of body work. I typically, instead of that sense of going out, it was always a sense of going into an interior space and then connecting that way. And because, frankly, there was a fair amount of pushback from other practitioners at the time, I was like, well, obviously it's not astral projection, so it's its own damn thing, and let me tell you about it. Any tips on remembering your dreams? Probably have a whole chapter and a half about that. There's dreams are a funny thing. So the more you pay attention to them, broadly speaking, the more likely you are to start kind of pulling them into consciousness. Uh, there's a couple of factors that will impact how or why we remember our dreams or don't remember them. If we are not getting good sleep or enough sleep, you are less likely to remember your dreams. You don't have enough time to go through a rather complicated cycle, three of which should happen per night. But, if you're getting like 5 hours of sleep a night, if it's broken sleep a night, you are less likely to complete those cycles in the way that your brain needs for you to be able to like fully bring those experiences into consciousness. Now, that does not mean that all is lost. If you can, as you wake up from sleeping, before your loud alarm goes off, before you hop out of bed, before you like make a break from your sleeping space to the rest of your day, especially if you have the luxury for a little bit of time with that, lay in bed, try to hold on to the sense of your dreaming space, your resting space, and cast your thoughts back to what that felt like. It may not be very clear. I think it's important to understand that everybody dreams differently. My dreams are incredibly vivid. It is like I am living a movie in almost all cases. It is full sensory, touch, taste, scent, the whole thing. Everything's full color. Uh, and that's not the case for everybody. Some people, it's only a feeling. Some people, it's just bits and pieces. Some people may move back and forth between something that is an immersive experience and some it's this abstract thing that you can't really put into like language. So coming to understand like what, as you first wake up, what does it feel like? Like what was going on in your mind before, even if it's just scraps and snippets. First, paying attention to it. Second, I am always going to come back to this. Writing stuff down helps. Even if you don't remember anything clearly, you can capture some of the flavor of what's kind of lingering in your mind in those waking up moments. And the more you do that, generally, the more likely you are to have some of it come forward in a way, in a form that you will remember. Uh, People with sleep apnea will have a harder time just straight across the board because untreated sleep apnea, let me say, because that is interfering with the way that you go through those cycles that are necessary for sleep. The more you talk about dreams, the more you study dreams, the more you pay attention to dreams and dreaming. Even if when you wake up, you tell yourself a story about what you should have been dreaming about, can help trigger memories with dreams.
Cool. All right. Any last thoughts on what people can expect to find in this version?
Oh wow, good lord! There's so much. So
really is.
This version is not just psychic woo woo, how to like do dream stuff. Like this digs into the physiology of dreams, the psychology of dreams, what our dreaming minds do, how they've been studied. Uh, there's a lot of interesting anecdotes of how historical figures have harnessed dreams and been inspired by them. We'll explore a lot of like pretty like deep stuff like those cycles that I'm talking about. Like we dig into like what is the alpha state? What is like what's the delta wave state? Like how does all of this affect the way in which you experience consciousness and that you experience memory? And what does that have to do with sleep and dreaming? And also the different types of dreams, because not every dream is paranormal, and not every dream is psychic, and not every dream is going to be a dream walk. And some of them are memory consolidation, where literally what you are experiencing as your dream is just sort of passively perceiving your brain moving short-term memory stuff into long-term memory, and you just get to experience that and try to tell yourself a story as just basically data is being moved around in your head. Those are the most common dreams. You learn something in a day or in a week, and in order to put it where you can remember it longer than just walking from room to room, there is a whole process that is necessary, and it's one of the reasons why sleep is essential. Our brains reset, our brains do a lot with memory and learning while we're asleep. And if we can't sleep and if we don't get good sleep, it interferes with all of that. And dreams are a significant part of that entire organic process. So the book goes into like the organic necessity of dreams and the psychological elements of dreams, the physiological elements of dreams. And then we launch into all of this like hazier bits of these psychic elements of dreams. Now, I think it's important to note, because we go into psychology, Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, anybody who was like really digging into psychology as an early science and establishing psychology, straight up was like, dreams are where all the paranormal shit happens. Like all of them. It was, there was a time in the 20th century where it was not even argued. It was the bigger argument was, how do you stop telepathic and psychic slippage between a therapist and the person taking therapy? Like there was so much going on. And we get to dig into like a fun controversy that grew out of that too. So we just have fun. It is a book that draws on my background both as a psychic experiencer, a vivid dreamer, and a person with parts, psychology in my degree. So it's a fun, smart, playful book, I think.
All right.
It's also why I'm married, I think.
That's not the reason.
Well, I know, but
I
like
did read
Illyria,
that book.
yeah, no, Illyria like really got to know me through reading this book, and I think it was a spark for trying to seek me out and like get to know me better. So now you know.
Alrighty. Well, with that, we will leave you all to go and perhaps find your copy of the second edition of Psychic Dreamwalking with its fantastically beautiful
I
cover.
really love the cover. This is yeah, best cover for this book.
Yeah, it really is. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. Good night.